Now, Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, wrote yesterday of the need for an emergency intervention against poverty and longer-term changes in the way we treat people who experience it. Last week on The World Tonight, we reported on statistics suggesting absolute poverty is at a 30-year high. The energy price hike following the invasion of Ukraine may explain the spike in the number of people affected. It doesn't explain why so many have fallen so far below the breadline or why so many of the children in poverty are from families who are working. Well, joining us now, Dominic Watters is a single dad, describing himself and his teenage daughter as living in deep poverty. Kitty Stewart is an associate professor at the London School of Economics, an expert in the causes and consequences of child poverty. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. Dominic, first, what does living in poverty mean to you and to your daughter?
It's painful to discuss. It feels like we're being slighted by society. My daughter and me live in the most deprived blocks of our council estate, and here our access to food, fresh food, is overlooked. The poor have always been in a cost of living crisis, but now it's at the point where our aspirations are being dimmed daily.
Kitty, how common is Dominic's experience, would you say?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a really widely shared experience, and it's growing more common. So more and more families are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet. You referred to the official figures which were released last week, and that shows that poverty is rising in families with children, both against the most common poverty line that we use, which is a relative income measure. That's actually been rising for a number of years. But we're also now seeing increases against an even more stringent threshold, sometimes called the absolute measure, as you referred to. And we're seeing significant increases in food insecurity. So the poverty rate's rising, and the depth of that poverty, the severity of the experience is also getting worse.
Dominic, there's an assumption by a lot of people, I think, that life should be getting easier because the rate of inflation has slowed and that some prices at least are starting to fall. Are you feeling any effect of that? Dominic, can you hear me? I think we might have lost Dominic. Kitty, what's wrong with policy as it stands now, and how have we got it apparently so wrong?
Well, if we look at other countries that have low child poverty rates, we find that the most effective policy is to provide adequate financial support for families when they have children.
So in other
when
words,
they're
more
bringing
money.
Up children. More money, yeah. So countries doing well have more generous child benefits than we do. Often those are universal child benefits going to all families, and they have more encompassing safety nets when something goes wrong and families need more support. And what we've been doing in the last 10 years is moving really in the opposite direction. So we've chipped away at the level of support available. We've made a whole series of cuts to benefits for families, both families in paid work and not in paid work. And we've created deliberate holes in the safety net as well with policies like the 2-child limit. So it's those policy decisions that are leading to the increases in poverty that we're seeing.
Dominic, I think you're back, and I'm sorry if you may have missed a little bit when the line dropped out. But what do you think about solutions? What things would you want to see done differently?
Yeah, well, it's good to be on The World Tonight because it's not that we're voiceless, it's just that we're unheard.
Right.
And I hear my neighbours, because of the cost of cooking, speaking about spending all day on the buses, going from supermarket to supermarket to get the cheapest deal on microwave meals, washing their clothes less to save a couple of quid a month on gas and electric. And in terms of solutions, I don't know how long we've got left, but
it's never enough.
Yeah, universal credit, there's been no increase as a recipient of it. So any one with influence that says it has been, that's untrue. Also, with the free school meals and the free school meal vouchers that Marcus Rashford passionately campaigned for, local authorities should be encouraged to distribute them at the nationally recommended amount because they're not.
So in other words, they're doing it. It's less value than the national level is advised to be, or we're told the national level is.
Yeah, so the national level, if it's okay to say, is £15 my local a week. So my local authority do it at £10 a week. Also for the kids, there's people talking about increasing or universalizing free school meals. for the kids that are actually the most disadvantaged and already on free school meal vouchers, this hasn't gone up the amount awarded since before the cost of living crisis, and the fastest increases in nearly 50 years. So kids on free school meals, like my daughter, are often going without a free lunch, and I have to top up her thumb so she can actually afford a lunch. And also, I think instead of politicians like trying to claim their working class heritage, they should come down and speak to people that are actually living in poverty,
rather than talk about what happened in the past. And just on that, Dominic, if we get a change of government, do you think it will make much difference?
Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but I only like to really speak about stuff that I know about.
I understand. Yeah.
I would say that change is overdue, and some sort of transformative change. I guess that Gordon Brown pointed to would be very welcome.
Let's talk about that a bit, Kitty. So, I mean, the Gordon Brown article yesterday was about kind of saying there needs to be a sort of emergency action, quite short term, for maybe 2 years, to give time for government of whichever party, actually, I think he was saying, to draw up a strategy to actually have something a bit more long term. Do you think there's anything in what Labour has proposed so far that suggests it gets the need for a new approach?
Yes, I think so. I'm optimistic on that. So we know that the last Labour government, Gordon Brown obviously being fundamental to that, had an excellent track record. It passed the Child Poverty Act, it set targets, had a whole set of policies which were working, and poverty was coming down. So we've seen it happen. And of course, now Labour are being really careful not to make any spending commitments. And they're going to have a lot to do if they do get elected. But what I find encouraging is that they've committed to having a child poverty strategy again. And tackling child poverty is key to one of the missions, one of Keir Starmer's 5 missions, the one on opportunity. So given that, and given their record in office in the past, despite no concrete commitments on policy, I think that what we'll see will be very different to what we've seen over the last decade.
Dominic, one of the things that I remember being said to me by a young painter decorator up in Dudley in the West Midlands a few years ago, that one of the problems he had with the welfare system was that it was inflexible. It couldn't respond to changes of circumstances, and therefore a lot of people who were working are in short-term work or in short contracts, maybe self-employed or they're subcontracted, find that their benefits don't keep up with them and they can't get benefits at those moments when they most need them. Is that an experience that matches what you've experienced?
Yeah, it's a dehumanizing system. It requires use of the internet to fill out the online portal that you're required to do. A lot of my neighbours don't have access to the internet, so a lot live in digital poverty as well. And also, as it sounds like was kind of communicated to you, it's a system that is designed to keep you where you are, and where we are is in deep poverty.
How do you give your daughter hope?
I guess featuring on The World Tonight will go some way. I'm working on my second book. I try and kind of speak up for people that are unheard, and I think there's a strong element of hope that exists within that.
Kitty, can I ask you finally, Kitty Stewart, how troubled should we be that poverty seems to be afflicting so many people who are in work?
I think we should be really, really concerned about that. And we need to be, we often talk, when you hear people talking about child poverty, they often quickly switch to talking about childcare and the need to, help parents into employment. And we do need to remember that, 2/3 of children are living with parents who are working. But those families also need support. I mean, as I've said, other countries that do better, they provide more universal child benefits, recognising that this is a stage in life where many, many families need help. We've known that, really for 100 years and more, that wages don't adjust for the extra costs of children. And we need additional support for many families at that time in life, even if they are in paid work.
Dominic, let me give you the last word. What would you like to say?
I think, if it's okay to be so bold, I don't think that this kind of narrative around, even parents who are working, because it really speaks to and is underpinned by this idea of the undeserving poor.
Yeah, which is a very old
There are a lot
idea,
of people
isn't it?
there's a lot of people that can't work. When I'm a single dad, when I had to be at the primary school gates at 8:45 and 2:45 every day and get 4 buses a day just to do that, there was no way I could. There were no opportunities of work.
Yeah.
So and this is not just a personalised thing. There were lots of other reasons that people aren't able to commit to work. So I think there's this idea of deserving and undeserving poor that
Dominic.
is an unfortunate way of approaching this issue.
Dominic Watters, Kitty Stewart, thank you both very much. Apologies that we couldn't bring you The Oldest Lifeguard and that interview on football and gambling. Time was against us, but we really wanted to take that discussion further. That's The World Tonight. Good night.
Studio direction was by Emma Crow. The editor was Amelia French.